My name is Helen Miller. I'm 67 years old, and I used to be a nurse at a small hospital in Iowa. I retired a few years after my husband Mark passed away, and since then, I've been living alone in the same little house where we raised our son Jason. Life after Mark was quiet. Some days it felt too quiet, especially when holidays came and went with only a short phone call from Jason. But I understood. He had his own family, a busy job, a beautiful daughter named Emily, and a wife, Lana, who always seemed polite, even if a bit distant. Then one day, out of the blue, Jason called and asked if I would consider moving in with them. He said they missed me, that Emily would love having her grandma around more. Lana got on the phone too and said it would be easier for everyone if I lived closer. I said yes without thinking twice. I thought I was being welcomed home. At the time, it felt like love. I packed up decades of memories, sold the house Mark, and I built together and moved into their newly remodeled place in the suburbs. They gave me the guest room upstairs and even helped carry my boxes in. Jason kissed my cheek and said I was going to love it there. I believed him. Looking back now, I wonder if they meant any of it, or if this had always been part of a plan I just didn't see. I thought I was walking into a new chapter one, filled with family dinners, bedtime stories, and laughter in the kitchen. But I had no idea I was stepping into something else entirely. Something colder. Something calculated. When Jason and Lana first brought up the idea of me moving in, it was during a Sunday afternoon call. Jason said he'd been thinking about how Emily was growing up so fast and how special it would be to have her grandmother around. Lana chimed in saying it would be easier for everyone and that having me close could mean more time together as a family. It felt like a second chance, not just at being present, but at being needed. After so many quiet days alone in my little house, the thought of waking up to my granddaughter's giggles and the smell of morning coffee in a busy kitchen filled my heart with something I hadn't felt in a long time. They cleared out a room for me upstairs. Jason repainted it himself. Light yellow, just the way I used to like. He said he remembered from when I redecorated our kitchen back when he was in high school. I remember tearing up when I saw it. It felt like love. Real, intentional, thoughtful love. The first few weeks were better than I could have dreamed. I helped Emily get ready for preschool every morning. She would sit on my lap while I brushed her hair, asking me silly questions about when her daddy was a kid. I cooked dinner on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Nothing fancy, just the recipes Jason grew up with. Lana said she appreciated the help and that it gave her time to rest. Sometimes Jason would walk in after work and smile when he saw me reading to Emily on the couch. He told me I made the house feel warmer. I believed him. I wanted to believe him so much. Even the small things made me happy, like when they gave me my own set of house keys or when Lana bought me a pair of fuzzy slippers to match hers. It was simple, domestic, exactly what I thought I'd been missing. And in those days, I never questioned any of it. I remember thinking this is how life is supposed to feel. This is what growing older with dignity looks like. Not just being tolerated, but belonging. Being seen. Being a part of something again. For the first time in years, I stopped feeling like a burden. I felt useful, valued, like the pieces of my life were falling back into place. There was laughter around the dinner table, bedtime stories, and the warmth of a home filled with voices other than my own. If someone had told me then that all of it was temporary, I don't think I would have believed them. Because in those early weeks, everything felt so right. So full of love. It started with a conversation that felt harmless. Lana pulled me aside one afternoon and said they were thinking about giving Emily more independence by turning the upstairs guest room into a play and learning space. She suggested I move into the downstairs room near the laundry room, where it would be quieter and more comfortable for someone my age. I didn't argue. I told myself it was practical. The stairs had been bothering my knees anyway, and maybe it really was a good idea for Emily to have her own little world upstairs. But as I packed my things into boxes, there was this strange ache in my chest, like I was being moved out of sight. The new room was fine. Smaller, darker, and tucked in the back of the house. There was no window to the street, just a small one that looked out onto a fence. I tried to decorate it with some old family photos, but it never quite felt like mine. It felt like storage, like I was being put away. Then the dinner stopped. At first, it was just little things. Lana saying they were eating out tonight and it didn't make sense for me to come. Jason apologizing, saying it was a date night or that they needed time to talk about Emily's schooling. Eventually, I stopped being told anything at all. I'd hear their laughter from the kitchen while I sat in silence downstairs. No one asked how my day was anymore. No one noticed if I skipped breakfast or stayed in my room longer than usual. I had gone from being a guest to something else entirely. An afterthought. A quiet figure moving through the hallways, careful not to get in the way. I used to feel like part of the family. Now I felt like a shadow in my own life. It started with the pill bottles. One morning, I noticed that the label on my memory supplement looked different. The bottle was the same, but the font on the label had changed, and the pills inside were a slightly different color than usual. I asked Lana about it. She said they'd switched brands because the old one was out of stock. I didn't think much of it at first, but then it happened again and again. Each time she had a calm explanation, and I wanted to believe her. But something in my gut told me to pay closer attention. Around the same time, Jason started asking strange little questions. Did I remember where I put the remote? Had I paid the electric bill at my old house before moving in? What day of the week was it? It wasn't like casual conversation. It felt rehearsed, like he was ticking boxes on a list no one had shown me. Some days I felt foggy, slower than usual. I chalked it up to aging or poor sleep, but a part of me started to wonder if it was something more. I began writing down everything I took and when. I hid one of the old bottles I had saved in the back of my drawer and compared the pills every few days. The worst part was pretending I didn't notice. Smiling, nodding, answering their strange little quizzes like it was all normal. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. And the deeper I looked, the more certain I became that they were trying to make me forget more than just where I left my keys. It was close to midnight when I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard Lana's voice coming from the living room. The lights were off, but she was talking quietly on the phone, pacing back and forth, her words slicing through the silence. I stopped, not meaning to eavesdrop, but then I heard her say it. She's almost gone anyway. A few more weeks and it'll all be over. My hand tightened around the glass, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. She kept talking like I was already dead, like I was just some final obstacle to clear before she got whatever it was she wanted. Her tone wasn't frustrated or emotional. It was cold, matter of fact, like she was discussing a shipment that was running late, not a person who had raised her husband and loved her granddaughter. I backed away before she saw me. My legs were shaking and my heart was pounding so loud I was afraid it would give me away. I sat on the edge of my bed for almost an hour trying to make sense of what I had just heard. I wanted to believe I misunderstood, but I hadn't. That night changed everything. Up until then, I had my suspicions. I thought maybe I was being sensitive or imagining things. But those words spoken in the dark when she thought no one was listening stripped away all my doubts. It wasn't forgetfulness. It wasn't age. It wasn't miscommunication. It was betrayal. Deliberate, careful, calculated betrayal. And I knew in that moment that I was no longer safe in my own family. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next morning. I poured my coffee like usual, smiled at Emily, and asked Lana if she needed help with dinner plans. I pretended nothing had changed. But inside, everything had. I started writing things down. Every word, every strange question, every change in my routine. I bought a small voice recorder online and kept it tucked in my cardigan pocket. I recorded their conversations when they thought I wasn't around. I photographed pill bottles, receipts, anything that looked off. I stopped taking the pills she handed me and pretended to forget. I flushed some, hid others, and documented the rest. I reread every document they had me sign when I moved in, looking for hidden clauses or quiet traps. That's when I found Mr. Caldwell's number, still scribbled in one of Mark's old notebooks. He'd been Mark's lawyer for years and someone I had always trusted. I called him from a payphone at the pharmacy across town. I told him everything. His voice stayed calm, but I could tell he understood the urgency. He told me what to do next and what to start gathering. That call was the first moment I felt in control again. They thought I was fading. They thought I was too old, too tired, too trusting. But I remembered everything. And I was done being quiet. Jason told me we had an appointment to check on my blood pressure. Routine stuff, he said. Just to stay ahead of things. I didn't argue. I nodded, grabbed my purse, and got in the car like I had no idea what was coming. But when we pulled into the medical complex and walked past the general clinic, I knew something was off. He led me to a suite labeled Cognitive Wellness Center. A nice receptionist with too much perfume smiled and handed me a clipboard. Jason filled out the forms for me, said I get confused with paperwork. I let him. I watched. Inside the exam room, the doctor smiled in that practiced way people smile when they're trying to be gentle. She asked me about the date, the president, how many words I could remember after a short story. I played the part. I even let my eyes wander for a second, let a pause linger just long enough to make Jason lean in like he expected me to slip. But I didn't. I answered every question clearly, calmly, with enough detail to make it obvious I was still very much aware. I told a story about my old job at the hospital, including names and dates. I recited a grocery list backward. I smiled politely at the end and thanked her for her time. Jason barely said a word on the way home. I think he knew. I think he realized the trap didn't work. But I didn't gloat. I just stared out the window and reminded myself this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. I didn't need to argue. I had proof now. Proof that their plan was unraveling. The next morning, I made copies of everything. The clean mental health report, the voice recordings, the photos of the pills, and the handwriting comparisons. I sealed them in a padded envelope and mailed them to Mr. Caldwell with a short handwritten note that said only one thing: I'm ready. 3 days later, he called and said it was time. He had already filed the necessary documents. 1 week after that, Jason and Lana received a formal letter from the court. It wasn't just a warning. It was a full petition to revoke shared access to my assets, along with a cease and desist outlining financial manipulation and coercion. I didn't need to yell or throw a scene. I changed the locks to the safety deposit box. I removed Jason's name from all shared accounts. I transferred the house title into a trust under my name alone and froze all outgoing transfers. When Jason tried to call, I didn't pick up. When Lana knocked on my door that evening, I didn't answer. It wasn't about revenge. I wasn't interested in punishing them. I just wanted my peace back. I wanted to live the rest of my life knowing I had control over it. They had tried to steal my mind, my home, my dignity. But they underestimated the one thing I had more of than both of them put together: time and patience. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I acted. And in the quiet that followed, I felt stronger than I had in years. I moved into a small apartment by the lake about 2 months after everything settled. It's nothing fancy, just one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a window that catches the afternoon sun just right. But it's mine, and every inch of it feels like a breath I forgot I'd been holding. Each morning, I wake up early and brew a cup of black coffee. No one rushes me. I drink it on the little balcony, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the water lap against the shore. Sometimes the silence feels like a gift. Other times, it's a reminder of everything I've left behind. I learned how to use Zoom so I could talk to Emily. We don't speak as often as we used to, but when we do, she tells me about school and shows me her drawings. I keep a few of them on the fridge, just like I used to with Jason's years ago. There's no bitterness, just a quiet kind of love that doesn't expect anything in return. I don't have the big house anymore. No wide staircase or guest rooms or polished hardwood floors. But I have peace. I have space to breathe, to think, to simply be. And some days when the breeze comes through the window just right, I close my eyes and let it carry me into the calm. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt invisible, I want you to know you're not alone. If you've ever sat in a room full of people and still felt like you didn't matter, I know that feeling. I lived it. I breathed it in every silent dinner, every glance that passed through me like I wasn't there. Being forgotten doesn't always happen loudly. Sometimes it creeps in quietly. It sounds like polite dismissals or the sound of a door closing upstairs while you sit alone downstairs. It feels like being helpful until you're no longer needed. Like love with conditions written in fine print. But I also want to tell you this. You don't need to raise your voice to reclaim your worth. You don't have to beg or break to be seen. What you need is to listen to yourself, to the little flickers inside that whisper when something isn't right. And when that voice speaks, you have to trust it. There's power in staying silent long enough to understand your next move. There's strength in watching, waiting, gathering what you need before you rise. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. If you use it well, it becomes your armor. Not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. You are not a burden. You are not too old, too soft, too late. You are still here. And that means you still have choices. You still get to decide how your story ends. So if they try to make you small, remember this. You don't have to fight fire with fire. Sometimes all it takes is one quiet, steady voice that refuses to disappear. Let that be yours. Let that be enough.